We started off this project because Elephant Castle is quite a hard urban area and there's not much space for people to garden in, there's not much open space, but there's a lot of development sites and a lot of empty land. So we approached the council and asked them if we could set up a community garden on one of the pieces of land that wasn't being used before the development happened. So instead of asking for a permanent plot, we said we'd have it for as long as we could and then we'd move on. And they were quite open to that idea. And we've been here 2 years and there's about 50 local people who garden here regularly now. And it's going quite well.
My name's Katrina Henderson. I'm the founder of ArtStop, which is now a community group. We used to run from Eastleigh Community Centre in Brownsbury Park. Whilst I was there, we had an exhibition based around knitting. That's where the whole Knit Pompey came about. And Jane and myself wanted to focus more on the yarn bombing side of things rather than just like go along, knit your own jumper. So as ArtStop, we're a group of like-minded artists who decided to form a community group to enable art in the community. So we do a wide range of activities from knitting to pottery to still life.
This project was sort of a way to do more because it's limiting when you're like gardening in the margins on pieces of land that you're not really supposed to be doing anything in. So the advantage of like getting this site that was legitimate, it just meant we could do a lot more. We could be a bit more organised. So yeah, it's slightly more permanent, slightly more legitimate, but the ethos is still quite similar, like people doing it themselves rather than the city being managed by the council or contractors or something. So.
My name's Richard Reynolds and I live here in Perronet House, a 10-storey tower block in the Elephant and Castle, which is, as you can probably hear, a very urban location. Central London, major roads, lots of high-rise buildings, and I was craving to have a garden. And this is now my garden. It's began as a guerrilla garden. Me going out at night, seeing the neglected opportunity and doing something about it. And so gradually, over nearly 10 years now, I've not only adopted this and looked after it, but many other locations in the neighbourhood, whether they're at the roadside or other abandoned garden spaces.
It's funny because we have a younger group on a Tuesday that meet to do knitting, and they just want to do their patterns. They don't really want to do yarn bombing. And then you get a load of like older ladies. They're like, yes, let's be a little bit rebellious. Let's do some knitting. It's going to go up out in the street. So it's really funny that you'd think it'd be the young ones who'd be like, oh, let's do graffiti, let's do some knitting. But it's not. It's the older generation I found that are like really up for it in Portsmouth. So people don't realise the time and effort that goes into it. And then sometimes they can be taken down the following day or stolen. So it's all about that instant. And I suppose where I'm a photographer, so I take the photograph of it, so then the photograph almost ends up becoming the art piece afterwards.
One of the side effects of guerrilla gardening round here has been that developers who are changing the area have realised that there is an enthusiasm from people like me to get gardening in neglected patches of the district. And that's meant that we've been offered a space to become a community garden. So it's not a guerrilla garden, but if we hadn't been guerrilla gardening, it would never have happened. And we call that the Mobile Gardeners Park.
The plan now is that we garden here until the development happens, which is going to be this autumn, but then we move to another site locally, and then when they want that to build on, we'll move to another site. So the garden should be around for 15 or 20 years, or maybe permanently, but it's not going to be in the same place, and it's something that could happen a lot more in central London.
Just found this. This is a geranium. It's not actually dead. I can see a leaf on it. I think this must have fallen out of someone's window, because I've definitely not planted this. So I'm going to put this in the bottom of our pram, which is going to be a useful gardening wheelbarrow, and we'll get this back to full health at home. It's a really nice plant. That I know the leaf. It's landed in the garden, so we're going to nurse that back to health. Can I just put that? They found it in the garden.
So you're going to plant it?
Well, I'll need to take it indoors and nurse it back to health.
This was where the strawberries were. Less than 24 hours and it's gone. I done a casino yarn bomb, and that was taken down after about 3-4 weeks, so we reckon it was by someone who took a fancy to it after a night out. But I didn't imagine it to be taken down from here, actually. I thought we were quite safe with Old Portsmouth, but no. Oh well. We have to move on to the next one and see if that's still there. Yeah, we don't bother asking permission to put them up, because if you ask permission and they say no, then you do it, then you can get into trouble. But if someone comes along and says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, I want you to take that down, you can take it down and you can act ignorant. So it's kind of a little bit naughty, but I suppose it's not that bad really.
This is a guerrilla garden, and while I should clarify, I've been on holiday for 3 weeks, and so had I not been on holiday, I would have cleared some of the leaves away from this. But despite that, it's doing really well. This guerrilla garden has been here since April 2008, and it was gardening this that triggered to the only time I've nearly been arrested. It was just mud and grass there, and we'd started it, and a police van came along this footpath and another one along here, and were very keen to round us up. But I agreed to stop what we were doing. We went home, had a nice bottle of wine, came back out again, carried on, and the fact that this is still here, doing really well, shows that you can get away with it even if the police aren't on your side. So we've got the daffodils coming out again, but on their way will be tulips, and in the summer we've got campanula and lavender. So there's always something looking good here. Even though we're surrounded by traffic and we're in the shade of this giant tree, you know, it's a noisy place, but it looks a bit better. Sadly, both that beautiful tree and this garden are threatened by the Mayor of London, who wants to chop that tree down and turn all what we're standing on now into tarmac. So I'm fighting that. It's part of a terrible proposal to make this junction much more polluted.
You know, the council have never said anything about it at all. We had trees knitted in the park for months, nothing happened. We had the bus shelter. When we had the bus shelter set up, we had a lot of people that come off the bus. We were giving out free tea and coffee. Bus drivers just looking, council people driving past, no one said a word. But it's that kind of thing, you don't ask permission, because if you ask permission they say no, and you go ahead and do it, then you can be in trouble. But if you just act ignorant, that you don't, I should be saying this on tape, and then there's no comeback, is there? There's like, say, oh sorry, I didn't know, and you can take it down. But at the end of the day, as far as I'm aware, the council actually quite like it.
For nearly a decade now, I've been both guerrilla gardening but also doing a lot to popularise it through my blog and my book and lecturing. And that's not only about getting people excited, getting them wanting to do it where they live, but it's also about trying to change the way that those who are in charge of our cities, who look after the public realm, think about them differently too, so that they're not just a cost and a chore or something that they hand over to professionals to landscape, but they're spaces that with the right culture, the right encouragement, people can look after them like we do, albeit without permission. So I would like to get to a place where you don't need to be a guerrilla gardener to be able to do locations like this, where the city make it easy for those who see the opportunity to get out there and do it. But for the time being, there's still a lot of guerrilla gardening to be done.
For the Lost Hour event, we're doing a series of yarn bombs, as you can see on the table, and what Jane and Freya are working on now, which are going to be dotted all over the city along the seafront as a trail. It was for Remembrance Sunday, so it was for those people that's fought for our country and sadly died. So every poppy was made by someone different, so it's been up since November, so it's been up for about 5 months now.
There's quite a lot of things happening in Elephant Castle around different issues. A lot of people are organising and campaigning, and I met Richard at a meeting about saving the trees on the Haygate estate, and we got talking, and he's been guerrilla gardening in the area for quite a number of years, just taking on abandoned pieces of land on, like verges at the road strip or tree pits, and gardening in them.
We were approached by the Naval Museum, the National Museum of the Royal Navy, I better get that one right, to do a big seaside yarnscape. We designed knitting patterns for fish and seahorses, which were sent out all over the world. We had an amazing response. We had 1,900 knitted fish sent in from all over the world, from as far as Australia, New Zealand, Dubai. It was amazing how big it got so quickly. That only came about due to a load of little knitting groups in Portsmouth. We hold events here and exhibitions, so basically promoting the work of artists in the city. And knitting is like just a tool that we use to kind of promote ourselves outside. We had a big exhibition based around knitting. It was very well attended. We were nominated for a couple of awards from that, so we got nominated for a Guides Awards for the best exhibition, which is quite crazy really. All these other exhibitions going on in the city, and a knitting exhibition got nominated. We got to the finals, so had a presentation at the King's Theatre. Sadly we didn't win, but it was quite spectacular to think that knitting, yarn bombing, yarn storming, graffiti knitting, an exhibition on that actually could be nominated for an arts award.
I came across some contractors chopping trees down in a road near here. Turned out they were from Transport for London, and their boss was with them and knew about this. He'd read about it in the paper and was concerned that I was about to get very upset. I was already upset about the trees coming down. He knew that they were going to have to make some changes here, and they had to chop out a bit of the bed here. So I did a deal with him in the street, and he agreed that they'd put in these 2 new beds. So they built the walls, put in the soil, and we've done the rest. There's 2 guerrilla gardens we've gone past today that are on death row. One is imminently on death row at the roundabout. The other one, I've also seen plans to turn it into a bus lane. One of them I'm quite resigned to accept, because it makes more sense for there to be a bus lane there, frankly, and I'm lucky that for the last 8 years we've been able to make a garden there, and that's been really satisfying. The other one I'm really angry about, but that's more because I think what they're doing to the whole junction is wrong. So, as a guerrilla gardener, I accept that because I've done it without permission, it's always going to be vulnerable to someone else in charge flattening it. So whilst I'd feel angry if this went, if there was a good reason, I would accept it. I can't think of a good reason. I really can't. And I think the more magnificent a guerrilla garden looks, the less likely anyone else could find a good reason.
Yeah, the Knitted Bus Shelter was a project, again another group project. The whole idea behind it was to highlight homelessness and the current financial kind of crisis, so to speak. We converted the bus shelter into a living room and we invited people to sit in it and take photographs. So it was quite interesting putting something in an outdoor space and turning it into like a living room, and people's opinions of it were quite mixed. It was quite funny. We had people who were like, oh, this is ridiculous, what are you doing this for? And there's people going, oh, this is great, this is really great. It's like a nice way to highlight important issues without it being too in your face.
So this is my biggest guerrilla garden. This is 8 years old this month. It used to just be grass with a few of those spiky cabbage palms in, and by this point my website had been attracting a lot of interest. There were a lot of people keen to help out and to do something big together. So over 4 nights in March 2006 we dug up the grass from here all the way to the end there and replanted it, mostly with lavender. You can see the lavender just behind this tree. We've grown strawberries here, cabbages, apples, there was even a tomato plant, but it's mostly ornamental. It is also where 8 years ago I met my now wife, who came along as a volunteer to do some weeding and tulip planting. One thing led to another, and 3 years ago I proposed just over there. So it's a very special place for us, and I continue to guerrilla garden here. There's no agreement, there's no contract. It's not like outside Parent House where we now have permission. This is a lot of fun to garden because it's a great way of meeting one's neighbours as well. You know, people stop and have a chat, and yeah, it's one I'm very proud of.
Yeah, it's just to make people smile, just for the pure enjoyment, and also brighten up the urban environment, really.